So I teach philosophy and I specifically teach about existentialism. And I personally am an existentialist in a way that I've applied it to my life, and it's helped me deal with depression and anxiety and various kind of negative aspects of just living. And I thought that it could be helpful, specifically existentialism could be helpful for navigating this whole coronavirus pandemic. Specifically, the idea of how we can make choices to try to make the situation less painful for us, and how we're also grappling with the idea of not having control over the situation. So, from an existentialist perspective, we technically have free will, even though we can't control our circumstances. And so that can be really overwhelming, it can be intense, it can be frustrating. And the idea here, though, is that we can control how we react to situations, we just can't necessarily control the situation itself. So, with this free will, it can be really exciting when you think about how we have the ability to craft our own lives, to craft our own existence, to create who we are, because there isn't a destiny, there isn't an essence or a soul or a self that we have, right? This is what we have the ability to do as human beings. And so, since we have free will, our existence precedes our essence, right? So we are thrown into the world and then we make choices, and those choices then define who we are, being our essence or constructed essence. And our essence is something that we decide for ourselves. So again, that feels really exciting and really liberating, but at the same time, it can be overwhelming, right? We as human beings, we have this subjectivity, meaning we have the choice to define who we are, but at the same time, we can also transcend that subjectivity, to go beyond that subjectivity, to go beyond that facticity and the givens of what we're born into, the bodies we're born into, the socioeconomic statuses we're born into. Now, this doesn't mean that we can completely ignore these givens. Obviously, they impact us very importantly and profoundly in our lives, but it also doesn't mean that they completely define us in terms of what all of our possibilities can be. And so, a consequence of having this free will is that we feel anguish and we feel abandonment. And so anguish is kind of this angst of, wow, I exist, I didn't choose to be here, but I have to make all of these choices with who I am and how I should act and how others will be, right? It's really overwhelming. And so how do you navigate this idea that I didn't choose to be here, but I still have to define who I am and I have to exist amongst other people, right? It's a very kind of overwhelming experience. But anguish doesn't prevent us from acting, right? Anguish is just a condition of our action. It just requires us to contemplate more and to try to understand the particularities of a situation. We also feel abandoned. We feel kind of thrown because we don't really have anyone to turn to who can tell us this is how you should be and this is how you should act, right? We have to figure this out for ourselves, and that can be really overwhelming. But existential despair and the idea of intersubjectivity can be really helpful when it comes to navigating this ambiguity of our existence. So, existential despair is the idea that, yes, we have this anguish, we don't know what to do, we don't know who we should become, but we have the ability to still commit ourselves to things that we find to be important, but we have to just commit ourselves to things without assuming that what we want to have happen will happen. So we can commit ourselves to certain principles, to certain people, to certain philosophies, but we can't necessarily assume that what will happen, what we want to have happen, will actually happen, right? We can't predict everything. We don't know what could happen later tonight. We don't know what could happen 10 years from now. And so we have to act with a sense of despair where you're just acting without hope. You don't necessarily know what could happen, but you're still acting. You can't necessarily assume that what you want to have happen will happen. But at the same time, you're not becoming apathetic or nihilistic where you just give up and say, you know what, I'm just going to watch Netflix and forget it all, right? It's easy or tempting to do that, but we still have to try. Well, you just have to try with a certain caution. So it's kind of like saying that the glass has water in it, but the water, it's not half empty or half full. There's just water in it, right? So it's being cautious about how we commit ourselves to things and how we should not define ourselves in relation to the broken dreams that we have or the broken wishes that we have, but in terms of the choices that we've made in our lives and how they've impacted us and other people. And intersubjectivity is basically building off of this idea that we as individuals have subjectivity, but it is connected to other people's existence. So while I am aware of my own existence, while I'm becoming conscious of my own existence, I'm also becoming conscious simultaneously of other people's existence. And so that's the idea of how our existence is interconnected metaphysically through reality. It's not just an ethical way of existing, but it's just how things are. So, of course, then there are ethical implications for how we should understand the ways in which our actions impact other people. So, as I'm becoming aware of myself, I'm also simultaneously becoming aware of other people's existence. And so that's why our existence is connected in that way. And that's why my actions impact other people, right? I didn't choose for it to happen like that. And that's kind of that angst about it. But that is reality. So I have to always consider how my actions are impacting other people. And that's why this applies seamlessly to the whole coronavirus pandemic that's happening. Now, myself, just like so many other people, have felt a sense of hopelessness, fear, anxiety, because this is an unprecedented situation and we just don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know how long we're going to have to be quarantined and isolated for. And it's really sad just seeing the news and seeing how many people are dying, or seeing how many people are hospitalized, and seeing how many people are being laid off, fired, furloughed, etc., because of the economic situation. So it really is easy to feel overwhelmed and just feel this frustration and feel the sense of powerlessness. Now, how I've applied existentialism to this is thinking about it through despair, where, yes, I myself am social distancing to flatten the curve, but at the same time, I don't necessarily know whether it's going to flatten the curve in an immediate direct way. I don't know how many people's lives will be spared. I don't know how many people will not get sick because I'm choosing to stay home. So that's an example of despair. I feel committed to staying home. I feel committed to flattening the curve and not exposing other people to something I could potentially have in an asymptomatic manner. But at the same time, right, I don't exactly know what's going to happen tomorrow even, right? Every day feels so unpredictable during this pandemic. And that's how I've been kind of navigating the situation, right? I don't know what's going to happen. It is an ambiguous situation, but at least I can feel authentic and fulfilled with what I'm doing right now in this moment and act based off of my subjectivity as a human. And this seamlessly then connects to intersubjectivity because our actions inevitably impact other people. So my choice to stay at home is impacting other people, even if I don't directly see it, right? Even if I don't directly see it in the stats that I'm reading every day or every other day, but our actions impact other people. So all the spring breakers in Florida, right? Their actions are impacting other people in addition to themselves. And so that's a very kind of direct way of how intersubjectivity works, where our existence and understanding of ourselves is in relation to other people. So I might be thinking, you know what, I feel really bad with everything that's happening, but at least I can feel ethically okay that I'm staying at home and trying to flatten the curve, even though I don't know if other people are feeling that way. And I think it's also this whole pandemic has brought about an interesting form of intersubjectivity in terms of how we are reacting to this. So if you have family or a partner or friends, you might see that they're, I guess, reacting to things in a different way than you might be. So I am reacting to this in a different way than some of my friends are, family, etc. And I think that's also another example of intersubjectivity, because I might feel that the way I'm reacting to this might be normal, but then I see other people who have completely different reactions to this. They're not anxious, they're not stressed out maybe, and it makes me feel like, wow, I guess this isn't normal to feel anxious or stressed out. But the idea is that normal is relative. So this is my reaction to it, but not everyone else is feeling this way. And that's just kind of how intersubjectivity helps us understand ourselves through understanding the ways in which other people exist. So one of the ways in which we kind of can think through existential despair and intersubjectivity in relation to the whole pandemic is that we can try to really enjoy those small pleasures, right? We can't go out to restaurants, we can't go out to bars, we can't hang out with our friends and family, we can't, hang out in crowded public parks and go to shows anymore, but we can still enjoy music, right? We can still dance in our apartments. We can still go on our balconies or try to step outside if people are respecting, physical distancing. And we can try to cook delicious food, right? These are things we still have right now, even though we don't have a lot of other things that we took for granted before. So that's kind of the silver lining, where many of us are perhaps trying to take this as an opportunity to cultivate new hobbies or for me, I've been trying to enrich hobbies that I currently already have, like cooking, writing, um, starting out with baking as well. But I think that's how I've been trying to cope with this, where there's only so much social media and news I can kind of receive right now. I have to limit myself, and I can distract myself by doing things that I love, like cooking, listening to music, dancing, having Zoom chats with people. And also, what's also helped me is that oftentimes we put pressure on ourselves to be really productive, right? Oh, well, I'm not commuting to work right now, so I'm saving X amount of hours every day. So therefore, I have to use this time to be more productive with something else. But for me, I keep trying to remember that, you know what, I'm just dealing with the grief of what's happening, and I'm not always going to be super productive, and I'm not going to always be super positive, and that's okay, right? I can just try to continue to enjoy the small moments to the best of my abilities and value what I do have, be grateful every day I wake up and I'm healthy, be grateful every day that I have my job, because I know many other people don't have that. And so those are some of the ways in which I'm coping with this situation. Like I said, enjoying the small moments, thinking about it through the lens of despair that, yes, I don't know if my actions are going to prevent, or not prevent, but decrease the spread of coronavirus, but I do know that at least I can feel authentic in my actions and commitments to flatten the curve. And also with intersubjectivity, that even if I don't see that direct reaction or direct result of my actions, they're still making some sort of impact in some way. And that by taking the time to self-reflect and to reflect about other people, reflect on other people and their choices, it helps me understand myself more. So I hope you found this video helpful with respect to thinking through the coronavirus pandemic and specifically how we can try to navigate it from an existentialist perspective.